I'm Steve Clemons. I direct the foreign policy programs here at the New America Foundation. I'm here with Steve Coll, president of the New America Foundation and also a staff writer with the New Yorker, and Peter Bergen, CNN's terrorism analyst and a senior fellow with New America Foundation. We're going to talk today a little bit about Pakistan, Pakistan in peril, and ask, now that we're looking at elections on February 18th, we've just had a high-profile assassination of one of the leading political forces in Pakistan, what the situation is as we tilt forward now. Peter Bergen.
Well, see, the one thing that I think there is some good news coming out of Pakistan, mostly bad news, but if you look at support for suicide bombings amongst ordinary Pakistanis, they've dropped from 41% to 9% in the last 3 years, which means that the Pakistani public is fed up with the militants. Suggests that there might be some political will to do something about this problem. Also, if you look at the MMA, which is the coalition of Islamist parties, they're polling at Dennis Kucinich-like numbers, below 4%. So, these guys are going to take a massive beating in this election. So, and the forces of sort of secular democratic opposition are likely to do pretty well. Pakistan's still going to have a lot of problems, but there is, people tend to focus on the negative, appropriately so, but I think there are one or two positive trends that we're seeing.
Just real quick, we tend to silo the Pakistan problem, the Pakistan election, the Pakistan leadership, when in fact a lot of the problems in Pakistan appear to be sort of transnational, and one wonders, one, how do you solve the problem without addressing not only Afghanistan but broader regional issues, and secondly, are our expectations just too high of Pakistani leadership, and you agree with me that we tend to silo these issues?
Well, there's no Afghan-Pakistan desk at the State Department, and maybe there's an argument for founding one. I mean, because these problems they're part and parcel of each other. But I think you're right that people tend to silo these problems, but amongst the policy community in this city, I think it's pretty obvious that people understand that these things are intimately related.
Steve, how do we achieve stability? I mean, that's one of the key goals, not just stabilizing the situation right now, but of course, elections aren't always stabilizing. They become triggers for instability, and certainly we have another fundamental problem that Zawahiri and bin Laden apparently reside in that country. So how do you think we should approach this challenge?
Well, there's a tension between short-term stability and long-term stability, and I think that the emphasis, unfortunately, since September 11th has been on the short term at the expense of the long term. And what you've seen in the last year has been the consequences of that. I don't mean to suggest that what's happened in Pakistan is a direct and sole result of U.S. foreign policy, but U.S. foreign policy has contributed to a year of rising instability. And you had in Musharraf an authoritarian leader backed by the army who was, when he took power, widely popular, and who attempted to implement needed reforms, but like many authoritarian leaders, overstayed his welcome and overestimated his own singular potential to transform this large and pluralistic country. Now, he is one of the most unpopular leaders in Pakistan, and the rise of competing claims to authority has destabilized the country. I think looking ahead, unfortunately in the short run, more instability is in order. You have a set of power sharing arrangements on offer in 2008 that have no precedent really in Pakistani history, and it's very difficult to make a case for how they're going to stabilize the country. Last point though, it's probably a necessary transition toward the long run stability that you asked about in the first instance. In the long run, only Pakistan's aspirations to a stable constitutional democracy, perhaps similar to that which eventually has taken hold in Turkey, where the army and civilian political parties sort out how to share space. That's the only path that I can imagine for a stable Pakistan in the long run. But it's going to be very bumpy over the next 1 to 5 years to even have a shot at creating such an order.
One last quick follow-up question. As Peter Bergen said earlier today in a New America Foundation forum, Benazir Bhutto at her death was very popular inside Pakistan. But if you talk to the average Pakistani citizen, which I have on a micro level here and there, I think many Pakistanis looked at both Benazir Bhutto and President Musharraf as sort of agents of American interest, and thus they had certain credibility and legitimacy problems. Do you think that there's a chance that Musharraf can recreate himself almost as an antagonist, and on one level, at least the appearance of an antagonist to U.S. interests, to reclaim some legitimacy in the eyes of the Pakistani public? And then secondly, can anyone be president, or would you suspect that someone could become president or prime minister, or really hold the leadership of Pakistan, who is not an agent of American interests?
I don't think Musharraf can reinvent himself, and I do think it's possible to imagine leadership that is at least ambivalent about the American relationship, if not openly hostile to it. I think that Musharraf's time as a political leader in Pakistan is waning rapidly, and it would be very difficult for him to recover his popularity. It would be difficult to imagine the circumstances in which he reinvented himself as an anti-American leader, although I suppose it's conceivable. What's more likely is the repetition of this debilitating rescue syndrome in Pakistani national life, where the army comes in to rescue the country, and the country wishes to be rescued by the army. And now you have the potential for a repeat of this narrative and a new chief of army staff. Musharraf's given up his uniform. There's a new man in charge of the army named Ashraf Kiani, who's very popular, and already the mythologizing about his reticence and his integrity and his interest in the national good is starting to take shape in Pakistan. And so in a sense, the country is readying itself for another rescue narrative, with him as the instrument of it, though not Musharraf.
We're here today with Steve Coll, who is a staff writer with the New Yorker and with the New America Foundation, has a major article coming out this next week in the New Yorker on Pakistan, and Peter Bergen of CNN's terrorism analyst, also with New America Foundation, and has a major piece this week in the most recent issue of New Republic. Thank you both for being with us.
Thanks, Steve.